Delta Force laughed at a veteran's tattoo, then the general exposed a surprising hidden story. Jake Mitchell stood in front of the mirror, the faint scent of antiseptic from the tattoo parlor still clinging to him like a badge of honor. The ink on his forearm was a black silhouette of his Delta Force unit's emblem, a stark reminder of brotherhood and sacrifice. He traced the edges with his fingers, every curve screaming courage, every line etching his experience in ink. But now, a sense of dread crept over him, knotting his stomach. Was this what he intended? Was he really anchoring his identity in memories that haunted him day and night? The VFW gathering had seemed like a lifeline, a chance to connect, to reclaim the threads that had unraveled since returning from combat. Yet, deep down, Jake felt the shadow of doubt lurk. Would they accept him? Or would they judge him a soldier turned civilian, a protector tarnished by the agony of his past? He held his breath at the thought of being rejected by the very brothers he once fought alongside. Arriving at the hall, Jake's rigid shoulders met laughter that shattered any hope he had for acceptance. It wasn't genuine camaraderie or shared history, it was mockery that had him retreating into himself. "Look at that tattoo," a voice in the crowd called out, the chuckles resonating through him like blades. He felt exposed, vulnerable, each laugh ripping into the fabric of his pride. How could he be ridiculed for honoring the values and sacrifices that defined him? Those hours of training, the gunfire, the unblinking terror, the laughter stung harder than any bullet. As the moment stretched on, anger burned in his chest, but the embers were quickly consumed by humiliation. He wanted to bolt, to hide away in the quiet of his house, far from the eyes that pierced through his pretense. Shame tugged at him, what he had worn proudly was now a shackle. Jake Mitchell, the hero they all remembered, was now just a shell, a man stripped of dignity. The brotherhood he revered seemed to vanish like an apparition, leaving behind only echoes of betrayal in the hollow pit of his stomach. Then, Lily stepped into the fray, her defiance a flicker of light cutting through the shadows that engulfed him. "Dad, that tattoo is amazing. It tells your story, doesn't it?" Her words struck him like lightning, flooding warmth through his veins. In her innocent mind, she saw courage, bravery, and a narrative worth telling. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Her faith ignited a flicker within him, a glint of strength buried deep beneath layers of hurt. He knew he had to confront this, had to seek understanding for the betrayal he felt. Summoning his courage, Jake took a deep breath, his resolve crystallizing. He spotted the Delta Force general in the corner, his heart surged with urgency. Would this man, steeped in the essence of the brotherhood Jake craved, offer him a glimmer of hope amid the anguish? What would it mean to him, navigating a world where his story, marked by sacrifice, was mocked? As he stepped forward, uncertainty clawed at his mind. Would he find acceptance or further ridicule? Would sharing his tattoo reveal the raw truths etched in his life, or would it open old wounds? In that instant, Jake felt the chasm between the past and his daunting present widen, a chasm filled with unspoken stories waiting to be told. What truths would emerge, and would he dare to unveil the hidden struggles intertwined with his own identity? The question lingered, heavy like a weight on his chest, as he prepared to confront the unexpected. The general stood with the weight of years etched on his face, a fortitude that resonated through the room. Each step Jake took felt monumental, reverberating in the empty spaces of his psyche. His heart raced, adrenaline coursing through him, battling the specters of apprehension and shame. "General," Jake found himself saying, voice steadier than he felt. "Can we talk?" The man regarded him, eyes narrowing with curiosity but devoid of judgment. "Of course, Jake. I heard what happened. Why don't we step outside?" As they moved through the crowd, Jake's mind buzzed with the implications of this moment. The mocking laughter still echoed against the walls, its bitterness almost palpable. But something shifted, the mocking now felt distant, a smokescreen obscuring the deeper inquiry he needed to pursue his own worth. Outside, the chill of the evening wrapped around them, grounding him amidst the chaos. Stars sparked above like distant dreams he had almost forgotten. I need to understand something, Jake began, experiencing a rush of vulnerability that frightened him. My tattoo, my story, it seems to be a joke to some of my brothers. Why should I even care about that? The general stared at him longer than he expected. Because their laughter stems from their own insecurities, not yours. Jake's breath caught, contrasting with the clammy air on his skin. Insecurity. A term he had always attributed to civilians, never to veterans, especially those who served alongside him. What do you mean? He asked, almost incredulously. The general let out a deep breath, folding his arms. Those men are grappling with their own battles back at home. When they see you standing proud with that tattoo, it challenges their failures. They might have shame about not having served as you did, or maybe they're struggling with memories they want to bury. Attacking you is easier. Jake pondered this revelation, a new light illuminating the room of shadows. But how do I move past this? How do I turn my pain and my pride into something meaningful? By telling your story, honestly and fearlessly. You've already started by inking it on your skin. Don't let their ridicule drown out your voice. The general's gaze pierced through to Jake's very core, awakening a familiar determination that had driven him in combat. What could he say now? Could he advocate for himself, share his experiences without the fear of sounding vulnerable? I want to tell them the truth, the pain, the sacrifice. But I worry it won't matter, Jake admitted. Get comfortable with the discomfort, the general replied, a slight grin breaking through the stern demeanor. It's in those moments of exposure that your power truly resides. Use it. There's strength in embracing your reality. It allows others to connect with you on a deeper level. That's how you build the brotherhood that you think has been lost. The general's words resonated within Jake, the embers of resolve stoking to a cadence he hadn't felt in a long time. As they spoke, defenses began to crumble, his voice steadied, carried by a current of conviction. What had once felt like a weight transformed into an anchor, solidifying who he was, a veteran bearing the scars of survival. He realized the tattoo was more than an emblem, it was a bridge to understanding himself and his past. As he stepped back into the hall, something had shifted. The disbelief, the laughter, they no longer held dominion over him. The night felt charged with possibility, and as he caught snippets of whispered mockery in the air, he felt compelled to confront it. Striding forward with an unfamiliar fire, Jake signaled for attention. I have something to say, he declared, fervently aware that this was the moment to forge a new path. Would they listen? Could he challenge them to see the stories behind the ink? As the laughter died down, anticipation hung heavy in the air. Would he find the brotherhood he sought, or would he be met with further derision? The moment of truth had arrived, a crossroad where silence met the urgency of his voice. Jake felt the weight of every set of eyes as they turned toward him, curiosity blending with skepticism. He took a breath, grounding himself amidst the shifting tides of adrenaline and purpose. The laughter had faded, leaving an almost eerie quietness, a blank slate for whatever was to come. In this crucial moment, he actively chose to stand tall rather than shrink in their presence. My tattoo isn't just some reckless decision. It represents the battles I've fought, both on the field and within myself, he began, urgency propelling his words. It encapsulates the pain of losing comrades, the fear that lingers even when the fight is over, and the pride I hold in serving a purpose larger than myself. He could feel their eyes narrowing. Some would challenge him, but others leaned in, intrigued. Jake locked his gaze on those faces, his brothers in arms who had placed their own histories under layers of bravado. When I was in combat, I didn't just fight for medals or accolades. I fought for the hopes of those who have gone and the values I still believe in. But too often, we revert to judgment instead of understanding. Laughter is an easy cloak to wear when faced with discomfort. As he spoke, internal hesitations began to mend. This was less about the tattoos he wore and more about the story behind them, the raw, intricate truths that shaped who he was. It was now or never to challenge the misunderstandings he felt clinging to him like a shroud. A burly veteran toward the back chuckled, eliciting a ripple of laughter once more, but Jake pressed on, the weight of the general's encouragement still fresh in his mind. Laughter isn't strength. It's a defense mechanism, a way to ward off vulnerability, he countered, his tone sharper, unyielding. We all struggle with our battles. I'm here to ask, why are we allowing that struggle to turn into mockery? A tense pause followed. Jake could see the wheels turning, perceptions were beginning to shift. The laughter didn't feel as intimidating now, it felt like an invitation for dialogue. I'm not here to diminish your experiences, he continued, softer this time. But we have to evolve past our insecurities. We must embrace our narratives, no matter how fragile they feel. My tattoo is a reminder of resilience, not just my own, but everyone's in this room. The atmosphere shifted. A few heads nodded, understanding flickering in their eyes, reminding Jake of the camaraderie he yearned for. They were all tangled in this web of pasts knitted together by shared experiences, frightening and beautiful. Every battle, every scar is a symbol of survival. Those who choose to mock may do so out of fear, but I'm challenging you to confront that fear instead. Ask how your stories can intertwine rather than divide. Jake felt the awakening hope within him expand. It was daunting to lay bare his struggles, but there was power in vulnerability, a connection that transcended bravado. This wasn't merely a conversation, it was an open channel through which they could forge deeper bonds. Finally, silence stretched, echoing the cavern of Jake's heart. It was in that quiet space that a new realization dawned on him, one he could almost touch. So, brothers, I challenge you, what are the stories behind your ink? Let us heal together. As some began to step forward, a flicker of excitement erupted within him. Maybe he had sparked something that transcended mockery, maybe he was unlocking the stories wrapped in their silence, but before he could grasp the full significance of this communal awakening, he caught the eye of one of the most sarcastic members, a smirk plastered on his face. You really think they'll listen to us, or is this just one big cry for help? The question hung in the air, charged and dangerous. Jake saw more than a challenge, he recognized that, for every voice willing to share, there were always those reluctant to reveal their vulnerabilities. The moment felt fragile, poised between solidarity and derision, and it pressed upon him, making him question what tomorrow's battlefield would demand of him. He couldn't back down now. Would he be able to rise to the occasion once more, or was he destined to clutch his pain alone? Jake's heart raced as he processed the sarcasm lingering in the air. It felt like a challenge, a dare to dig deeper rather than retreat under the weight of mocking laughter. The bravado in that smirk exposed a vulnerability that Jake recognized, though the noise it produced felt like an ambush on his fragile momentum. In that moment, he was at a crossroads. He could either dismiss the comment or confront it head-on. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, grounding himself in the knowledge that this wasn't just about him anymore, it was about everything that had gone unsaid in this room. What if I told you that pouring your heart out isn't a sign of weakness but strength? He countered. How many of you have felt the pressure to laugh it off when it gets tough? That's not living, that's just surviving. Pausing to let those words sink in, he scanned the room, picking up subtle cues from his peers. The ideal of true strength exposing wounds instead of bandaging them with humor was a foreign concept, one he was willing to introduce as the foundation of a deeper bond. I'm not here for sympathy. I want raw honesty. Let us own it. You've seen the scars, the ink, you've fought your own battles. Aren't we ready to face our truths? His voice acted as a clarion call to warriors who had perhaps become too comfortable in their silence. That challenge seemed to unlock something in the atmosphere. He sensed the collective hesitation giving way to an unspoken acknowledgement. Perhaps they were all tired of the pretense, tired of hiding their stories beneath layers of bravado. Let us turn this around, Jake urged. Look, we've spent too long crafting narratives of invincibility, but the truth is our vulnerabilities make us human. What if we found strength in sharing those fears as openly as we flaunt our triumphs? He couldn't tell if the shifting expressions around him leaned toward skeptical acceptance or if they still harbored disbelief. Yet the silence spoke volumes. In that unbroken wall of quiet, Jake connected the dots back to the struggle that each veteran embodied. A man on the front row finally broke the silence. You're asking us to drop our shields, Jake. That's a hell of a risk. What's in it for us? The question was tinged with skepticism but dire curiosity. Jake felt the weight of truth pressing upon him as he reflected on that line. What was in it for them? More than anything, he recognized a shared yearning, a desire for connection that transcended words and existed in shared experiences. Freedom from our pasts. Catharsis. Growth. I can't promise answers or healing, but what I can offer is authenticity, the kind that can either tear us apart or bind us more tightly, building a resilience rooted in community. With his heart pounding and tension barely held at bay, he sensed the critical nature of his next words. This isn't about me, it's about us. We've all lost someone, we've all felt the pain. You may call it a tattoo, or ink, or battle scars, but they represent everything we are. Let us own that together. A wave of murmurs rippled across the assembled veterans. Jake could feel the literal shift, a crack in the wall that sheltered their emotions, a desire to step into the light of shared vulnerability. As some began to share their stories, Jake sought to anchor himself in this unfolding moment. He realized how pivotal this was, not just for them, but for him as well, an opportunity to shed layers he had carried for far too long. Just as he prepared to jump fully into the depths of their shared narratives, the door swung open, and his commanding general stepped in, eyes scanning the room with intensity. What's going on here, Jake? The general's arrival felt like an unexpected twist, a whirlwind throwing everything into flux once again. Jake was left wondering if this was a moment of judgment or an intersection of newfound strength. Either way, the delicate balance he fought to create teetered on the brink of an entirely new confrontation. The stakes had just been raised, and he would have to navigate not just the stories of his comrades, but also the consequences of drawing the general's attention. Jake froze momentarily, the weight of the general's presence suffocating the raw momentum he had barely begun to build. The tension in the room thickened as all eyes shifted to the commanding officer, their collective vulnerability now overshadowed by the potential consequences of his sudden appearance. What had been a moment of unity threatened to dissolve under the harsh glare of rank. "Sir," Jake replied, his voice steady but quiet, barely breaking the silence that had spiraled inward, creating an urgent internal dialogue in which self-doubt wrestled with courage. He desperately sought not only to defend his choice to speak so boldly but also to stand tall in the face of the looming confrontation. "We're just talking about our experiences, sharing our truths." The general's brow furrowed, but beneath the stern exterior lay an ember of curiosity that Jake caught flickering in the general's eyes. "Sharing, huh?" came the gravelly reply. The tone was skeptical, yet it felt as though he was merely testing the waters. Jake took a measured step forward, the initial fear slowly morphing into resolve. He could feel his comrades behind him, their collective breaths hung heavy in the air, clamoring for this moment to transform into something more than just an impasse. "Yes, sir," he pressed on, now feeling that his own vulnerability was at stake, propelling him into this newfound role of leader. "We're tired of hiding. We're all scarred in some way or another. It's not weakness to lay it bare, it's an invitation to be stronger." The general shifted slightly, his expression inscrutable. "Invitations can be risky, Jake. You're asking these men to confront things that many of them bury. What do you expect to gain from it?" Jake's mind raced. What he craved was so profound it was hard to articulate. "Gaining is not the right word, sir. It's the chance for honesty to confront the ghosts instead of allowing them to control us. I believe we can find strength in each other's stories." Without waiting for permission, he continued. I guess I'm tired of feeling like what I carry is a burden. Maybe by sharing, we can find a way to release it. The conviction in his voice surprised even him, awakening a sense of purpose he hadn't anticipated. The room remained silent, but a few nods emerged from the veterans, tiny sparks igniting within the gathered troops. The general adjusted his posture, the shift almost imperceptible but significant. You're advocating for a group therapy session, in essence? In the middle of a military institution? His skepticism was evident, but the softening in his voice hinted at an openness buried deep within. Yes, sir, Jake replied, standing taller now. But it's more than just that. It's about breaking the chains of silence, growing together. I can't do this alone, and I feel that if we don't show our wounds, we'll remain isolated in our struggles. Sounds a bit idealistic, said the general, but rather than dismissing Jake, he began to scrutinize. Jake seized the moment. It may be idealistic, but ideals are often the first steps toward change. If we're going to heal, we need to face it together. There was a long pause, the general clearly weighing Jake's words against the expectations of a hardened military culture. Jake felt a surge of apprehension mixed with an exhilarating sense of freedom. Would this lead to acceptance or retribution? The moment was teetering. What if I told you, the general finally said, that I was once in a similar situation, long before I got this, my own set of scars to deal with? The revelation landed like a stone, and the potential for connection surged through the air, electrifying Jake's senses. Had he really just unlocked the general's hidden history? In an instant, the tables could turn. Jake could find not only validation but a partner in confronting their shared struggles. Would this be an opening to finally push through the armor they had all worn for so long? And as he stood anchored amidst the simmering uncertainty, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment of transformation he had been seeking all along. Yet internally, another question surged forth: what price do we pay for courage? The murmurs of surprise that rippled through the room were almost overwhelming. Jake struggled to maintain his composure, knowing the weight of the general's admission. This unexpected turn of events offered a chance to bridge a gap that had long felt insurmountable. The gulf between rank and experience could narrow, if only for a moment. What do you mean? Jake prodded, taking a step closer, his heart racing with anticipation. The atmosphere shifted. It was no longer just about his desire to share or speak up. This was a shared moment, a pivotal potential in creating a rare connection. The general drew in a deep breath, his gaze momentarily fixed on the floor, a faint hint of vulnerability flickering across his features. I had a platoon that went through hell. Some of those men never came back. We weren't prepared to confront what we experienced. Jake could sense a subtle crack in the armor that the general had worn like a second skin for years. What happened during that time? Jake found himself leaning in, propelled by a mixture of empathy and a desire to understand. It was a challenge, asking a leader to peel back layers, revealing the intricate struggles he had concealed. Denial, mostly, replied the general, his voice low but resonant. We buried ourselves in the mission. Laughter masked the pain, and our scars only deepened. I thought it was just what soldiers do, push through, suppress. But that left a void, a legacy of silence. Jake sensed a shared understanding lurking beneath the surface. He knew what it was like to hide, to wear a brave face while battling inner demons. Suddenly, the discussion wasn't just about the interest in opening up, it was about confronting the very real consequences of not addressing their emotional burdens. The general's story resonated with him. Jake realized that he stood on a threshold of understanding, not just for himself, but also for others in the room, each wrestling with feelings that were now coming to light. Driven by desperation, he pressed further. What if we could create a space where we don't have to hide? Where the weight can be shared, rather than shouldered alone? A flicker of something, perhaps hope or defiance, crossed the general's face. You might just be onto something, Jake. It's not just about sharing, it's about reclaiming our narrative. But it starts with finding the right leadership within this structure. Jake's heart raced. Here was a crack in the fortress of rigidity that encompassed military culture, a possibility for growth for everyone present. The idea of leadership transformed the idea that it could stem from honesty rather than hierarchy. But what would that entail? Could they truly step beyond the echoes of their pasts and address the hurts together? Then let us do it. Let us take the first step. His words tumbled out with urgency, a clear determination in his voice to manifest this shared aspiration aloud. Let us hold a session. Invite those who want to join. This could change everything. The tension shifted, transforming from confrontation to opportunity. But Jake felt the anxiety coil beneath his optimism. Now, he had a new challenge. Could he initiate this transformation while grappling with his own scars? Jake, the general warned, raising an eyebrow. This won't be easy. Look at where you stand now, the scrutiny, the risk. Are you ready to deal with the repercussions of trying to pull others into a space that might make them uncomfortable? The weight of the question loomed over Jake. He had pushed so far, but was he prepared to navigate the storm that might ensue? The room held its breath as he grasped the magnitude of what he was proposing. In that moment, he realized the real cost of courage would extend beyond facing their stories. It would demand relentless self-examination, a willingness to question both his motives and the loyalty of those around him. As he looked around, surveying the faces of his comrades and the general, something deeper surfaced within him, a fire igniting in his core. What if I can't lead them out? Jake grappled with the burden of leadership, confronted by the possibilities of failure. And yet, it was the very fear of not trying that propelled him forward. I'm ready, sir. Are you? A silence enveloped them, now holding a mix of trepidation and promise. Would the general join him in this journey of vulnerability, embracing change? As uncertainty prevailed, the question lingered, woven into the air of ambition and turmoil, like a fuse awaiting ignition. Jake had taken a risk, but he was poised on the edge of something transformative. Then we face it together, the general finally muttered, the beginning of a shift in the narrative. And with that, Jake felt the gravity of his challenge crystallize. It wasn't just about the courage to talk, it was the courage to lead into a cavern rife with darkness, where the true shadows lay waiting to be confronted. What's the next step? He asked himself, feeling that the real journey was only just beginning. Jake awoke the next morning, heart still thrumming with remnants of the prior night's adrenaline. The room was quiet, but his mind was crowded with questions. His notion of leadership had shifted, molded by the vulnerability he had witnessed. What if the emotional burdens of his comrades could be addressed in a way that fostered a new understanding? Despite the sting of doubt clawing at his consciousness, he felt a surge of determination. Step 1 loomed ahead, a palpable presence. He grabbed his notebook, flipping through hastily scribbled lines from earlier brainstorming sessions, notes stitched together under the watchful eyes of his peers. They were fragmented thoughts, fragments of potential. He needed a structure for the upcoming session. One that could channel their emotions into productivity, a safe harbor from the storm of their pasts. This wasn't just a gathering, it would be a catalyst for something greater than himself. But how could he orchestrate such a delicate balance of safety and openness? The idea struck him: focus on small group discussions to foster intimacy. He could curate topics that would encourage sharing without pushing too hard. He scribbled down his thoughts. What does courage mean to you? What are you afraid to confront? Moments later, his phone buzzed with a message from the general: let us meet. I want to help you prepare. Jake's heart skipped. The support of the general could lend credibility to the initiative. But it also ratified what lingered beneath the surface, the weight of expectation. How could he align his vision with the general's experience, ensuring they were lined up toward a common goal? They convened in a small office, cluttered with military memorabilia and faded photographs of soldiers long gone. Jake paced the room, a strategy blossoming in his mind as he discussed his plan. The general listened intently, nodding occasionally, his expression revealing little. You're on the right track, the general finally remarked, breaking the silence that had settled like dust. But remember, the soldiers you're dealing with may push back. They might not want to dredge up the past. Jake hesitated. A kernel of worry nestled in his chest. What if they resist? What if I fail? I can't repeat the mistakes of avoidance. The general studied him for a long moment. Courage starts with acknowledging that fear. You've already taken the first steps. Now, you must guide them in facing their own. The wisdom of the statement hung in the air, profound yet terrifying. Jake realized he was not just stepping into leadership but into the expanse of human vulnerability. Each soldier had a different story, their experiences varied wildly, yet the scars were marred by the same conflict. That's it then, he said, a new resolve encompassing him. Each voice matters in this. I'll structure the session around open dialogue, no judgments. The general's brows furrowed slightly. You'll also need someone to help talk you through your journey. You may consider sharing your own experiences. It's a risk, understanding the stories will challenge you. Jake's pulse quickened. Was he ready to expose his own vulnerabilities? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, yet the potential for healing created a warmth. I can do that, he managed, though he wondered if he truly could. After a long discussion about logistics and expectations, the general stood, clapping a hand on Jake's shoulder. Once you face your own fears, you'll guide others through theirs. Trust the process. Jake walked out of the office, an electric hum of anticipation coursing through him. The general's faith settled heavy on his shoulders, igniting a purpose deep within him. But alongside the burgeoning excitement was a surge of doubt. Could he genuinely handle the weight of other people's pain while wrestling with his own? As he stood outside, staring into the horizon where sunlight embraced the day, that very question nagged at him, a relentless whisper in the back of his mind. He took a deep breath, recognizing that leadership was not only about guiding others, but navigating his own internal wilderness. His phone buzzed again, this time a message from one of his comrades expressing interest in joining the session. A spark ignited. Perhaps they were on the brink of something monumental. But as he pondered the impending session, the uncertainty loomed larger than before. Would he truly be able to lead them into the darkness, or would he falter when faced with his past? He frowned, the challenge crystallizing. It was a plunge into uncharted waters, a test of his newfound understanding. What if he discovered that the true barrier was not the resistance of others but the limitations he placed on himself? The moment of facing that reality approached, an impending storm looming just on the horizon. Jake spent the afternoon pacing the empty expanse of his room. Each step exaggerated his restlessness, each breath a reminder of the ticking clock. The weight of what lay ahead pressed on him more heavily than the physical burden of any gear he had ever carried. Fragments of his thoughts jumbled together, each piece pulling him in a different direction. He was about to lead a session that he hoped would be transformative, yet the fear of inadequacy loomed large. As dusk fell, fatigue began to seep into his bones, but the fire of resolve coursed within. His phone buzzed, drawing him out of his spiraling thoughts. It was a message from the general with a time for the gathering. That small confirmation sparked an urgency. He needed to be ready not just in terms of structure, but in himself. The reality of his own past pressed against him like a wall. He had always maintained a stoic facade, believing strength meant suppressing pain. Could he rip that mask away? The very notion sent tremors through his resolve. Yet, wasn't he that vulnerability that he hoped to coax from the others? Flipping open his notebook again, he scribbled notes, but this time focused on his own story as well. What experiences laid the groundwork for his leadership today? He recalled the way he struggled after his own deployment, how silence had swallowed him whole. A sense of helplessness had taken root. Yet, one small act of sharing with a fellow soldier had sparked a light, hearing another voice, another experience. Jake understood then that acknowledgement of pain and vulnerability didn't signify weakness, it was liberation. But would his comrades perceive it that way? his notebook filled with the inked uncertainty of his decisions. He stressed these reflections into questions he might pose. What held you back in the darkest moments? What do you wish you had said? Gazing at the words, his heart surged with a blend of hope and trepidation. He would share his story, he would take that leap. The next morning, adrenaline surged through him like a wave as he dressed in his best uniform. Each crease of the fabric felt like armor, yet the familiar routine faltered under the gravity of what lay ahead. He hesitated at the door, inhaling deeply, yearning to ground himself. This gathering was more than a task, it was a chance to carve a path, for himself and for those who would follow. Upon entering the meeting room, the muted chatter filled the air, a cocktail of nervous excitement and apprehension. Jake surveyed the faces of his comrades, all carrying their own storms beneath the surface. Anxiety gripped him anew, every glance reminding him of their potential reluctance to engage. As he took his place at the front, he noted the palpable tension, a collective breath held in anticipation. He opened with his own hesitations, how he had wrestled with the weight of expectation, how it felt like a descent into darkness, a collective experience mirrored in the eyes before him. As we navigate this session, know that I stand with you. This isn't just about confronting the past, it's about our collective strength in doing so, he declared, discovering his voice resonating through the room. A flicker of understanding sparked amongst them. But would it be enough? The question lingered, would they embrace this journey or retreat into the shadows? Just as he felt a fragile connection forming, a deep voice interrupted from the back, filled with skepticism. Why should we trust you to lead us through this? You haven't lived what we've lived. The challenge forced Jake to confront more than just the words. Doubt tangled with determination. The general's earlier words echoed thinly in the back of his mind. Confronting his fears. Showing up despite hesitation. That moment, the tension palpable, seemed to stretch. The room waited, breaths caught in uncertainty. Jake felt the heat of vulnerability wash over him, igniting the courage to answer, to engage. He dropped the facade, barring his truth. You're right. I don't know your specific scars, but I understand the weight of carrying them. And I want to offer you my support to face them together. The words hung in the air like a challenge in itself. How would his comrades respond? Would they allow themselves to forge through the barriers? As silence enveloped the room, Jake's heart raced with the thrill of potential transformation. But buried within him was the gnawing thought, was he doing anything more than exposing himself to further rejection? What awaited him on the other side of this moment, connection or isolation? The answer loomed ominously, the session barely begun, and with it, the horizon of vulnerability lay just out of reach. Jake stood frozen, grappling with the uncertainty that hung thick in the air. The skepticism directed at him was not merely a question, it was a challenge that pierced through the protective layer he had worked so hard to maintain. His heartbeat quickened as he scanned the expressions around him, some hardened by years of combat, others shadowed by personal trials. Each face was a reflection of his doubts, each skeptical brow a mirror echoing his fears of inadequacy. Silence stretched unbearably before him. With an inward breath, Jake gathered himself, pushing against the tidal wave of vulnerability threatening to pull him under. If he was going to ask these men and women to share their burdens, he needed to be the first to break the silence, to show that real strength lay in openness. I know I haven't stood in your boots, but I've fought my own demons. Let me share what I've learned, and maybe we can all see a little clearer. The pause ended, sharp and deliberate, as a faint murmur began. It was tentative, as if a single ripple had sparked a broader wave. One soldier shifted forward, the glisten of unshed tears in his eyes suggesting an inner battle still waged. Another nodded, arms crossed, as if weighing the potential of letting someone else in. Jake felt the flicker of anticipation igniting within him. Had he opened the floodgates? Was their collective silence about to give way to something profound and transformative? He pressed on, inviting them into dialogue. What has been readied in you, waiting to be shared? Pain. It's what has always been there, came a quiet voice from the first row. A young woman with dark hair and a weariness evident in her shoulders spoke. Her words landed like stone, striking at the foundations of the room. What if we could turn that pain into something powerful? Jake responded, channeling the urgency coursing through him. What if we faced it together? The crowd shifted, murmurs cascading through the rows. Questions floated, intertwining doubts and hopes. Jake realized he had ignited a spark, a willingness to engage, despite the jagged edges, and then it happened. One soldier, his arms covered in tattoos depicting battles won and lost, stood, fists clenched but a tremor racing through him. You think talking's going to fix everything? He barked. You think we want to drudge up old wounds? How can you help us? By acknowledging them, Jake replied, feeling the weight of each word as it escaped. By recognizing we're not alone in this. Let me guide you through that darkness. It's terrifying, but it's how we start healing. The soldier's eyes narrowed, but the challenge morphed into something more uncertain, curiosity tinged with vulnerability. Jake sensed a shared understanding in that look. We are stronger for our scars, not defined by them. Suddenly, memories rushed to the forefront of his mind, the barren isolation he had faced in his own darkness, the moment he first chose to talk. Would this be their moment, too? Would each soldier confront their own frozen depths? As they wrestled with his words, Jake took a step forward, relinquishing the last semblance of his facade. Tell me about your battles, he urged, his voice rising with conviction. Let us transform that burden into a shared narrative. Those murmurings sparked discussions, confrontations of pain and survival, not just battles fought on the field but personal ones pressed into the human heart. Yet, doubt still clung to him, despite the transformation unfolding. What if this camaraderie drifted as quickly as it had formed? Maybe we'll just fall back into silence, he thought, fighting to maintain his own conviction against the inklings of pessimism. He needed to redirect not just their stories, but his own fears, as well. As the session began to deepen, a familiar voice cut through the emerging revelations, a sudden interruption from the back of the room. If it's healing you're after, then who will guard our scars? Questions lingered like echoes of thunder, pointing Jake toward a storm he wasn't sure he was prepared to weather. Fingers clenched. Tension curled within him. Was he ready to stand against it, armed only with the stories they share? What awaited at the edge of that vulnerability, further connection or a perilous chasm that could swallow them whole? With every beat of his heart, the magnitude of that moment loomed ahead, the answers as elusive as the healing he hoped to instigate. In the aftermath of that charged session, Jake emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. As veterans trickled out of the room, the air was thick with whispered confessions and weary camaraderie. Each story shared had transformed individual pain into a collective strength, fusing their struggles into a newfound alliance. Jake felt an electric pulse of hope course through him. He had invited them into vulnerability, and they had answered with authenticity. He stood in the hallway, reflecting on how this moment differed from where he had begun. Once a soldier burdened by shame, he now bore the vitality of connection forged through shared struggle. The laughter that had once stung him now felt like fleeting echoes, each while laden with lessons rather than mockery. He had turned a page, one inked not just with personal sacrifice but with collective healing, yet, the true test lay ahead. The stakes were higher now. His call to action had ignited flickers of discourse, but would they sustain the fire? He pulled out his notebook, pages infused with scrawled lines from earlier sessions, notes that still brimmed with potential. There was a structure to create, scaffolding for this burgeoning community, a space to rebuild their narratives before the walls of silence could encroach once more. As he organized his thoughts, an unexpected knock interrupted his contemplation. It was the general, stepping into the room with a nod of approval that Jake hadn't anticipated. You did well today, the general began, running a hand through his graying hair, his expression revealing traces of pride that cast aside the soldier's usual stoicism. What you've started here isn't simply a support group, it's a movement. Instantaneously, a surge of confidence enveloped Jake. Validation from a figure like the general held the weight of acknowledgement and latent potential. It was not just affirmation, it was an invitation to push harder, to delve deeper. "I couldn't have done it without the honesty from my brothers," Jake replied, his voice steady, a newfound clarity emerging. "We're ready to confront our pain. We need more than just one session, we need a movement." The general's eyes sparkled, a glimmer of understanding crossing the divide between their ranks. "Then let us develop a framework. Something that can foster dialogues about mental health not just here but within the entire community of veterans." As they strategized, the threads of their discussion wove together actionable plans, from regular meeting schedules to awareness initiatives that could ripple outward, breaking the chains of silence binding veterans everywhere. Jake felt invigorated. This wasn't merely about one tattoo or one story, it was about inciting change, shifting paradigms around vulnerability and masculinity. The weeks that followed saw a whirlwind of activity. Attendance at the sessions grew, each meeting reshaping their culture one conversation at a time. Achievements materialized not as solitary victories but as every veteran courageously unraveled their narratives, echoing the truths that had once felt insurmountable. Jake found himself more than a facilitator, he became a palpable part of their collective journey, a vessel of hope, a testament to resilience, his previous isolation a stark contrast to the vibrant connections flourishing around him. As their stories spilled forth, Jake began sharing his own, revealing the shadows that once haunted him, instilling further strength to those around him to peel back their own layers. Each revealing moment revealed cracks in the culture of silence. A cathartic release echoed through the room, solidifying Jake's role as an agent of transformation. He had achieved not just acceptance, but an established position where he led with purpose and authenticity. On the morning of the inaugural Veteran Stories Showcase, Jake stood in front of a larger audience than he had ever envisioned. A palpable energy filled the space, a convergence of brothers and sisters who had chosen to confront their realities together. The stories shared that day transcended individual scars, becoming a tapestry of redemption spun from shared fears and triumphs. As the final story echoed through the hall, Jake stood at the back, pride swelling in his chest, not the hollow pride of finance or accolades, but the deep, fulfilling pride born of connection and growth. The journey had catalyzed not just his own healing but a collective shift in the veteran community he once feared was irreparably fractured. He reflected on how far he had come from that initial VFW gathering where laughter had cruelly shattered his spirit. Now, he had cultivated a climate where vulnerability was the ultimate strength. The tattoo on his arm, once perceived as a reminder of past sufferings, now gleamed as a beacon of hope, a symbol of camaraderie, shared pain, and collective path forward. In that transformative moment, Jake Mitchell was no longer merely a veteran, he had evolved into a leader, a storyteller, and a champion for empowerment among those who had fought their own battles with silence. He had conquered the specter of ridicule through authentic connection, proving that honoring one's truth could forge deep emotional bonds, while evolving into a model of resilience for future generations. Their laughter, no longer laughter at his expense, now resonated in echoes of unity, an invitation to embrace vulnerability, building a community reborn amidst the aftermath of pain. And so, Jake stood proud, grounded in the authenticity of his journey, a tribute not just in ink, but in the very hearts that surrounded him. It was here, in this moment, that he fully understood, vulnerability was indeed strength, and their stories, their scars could one day illuminate paths for many more. You need to subscribe now to this channel, so you're always updated with transformative stories just like Jake's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping us reach more souls searching for hope and connection. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's incredible journey. Your insights matter, and please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this inspiring conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to help others find their way through their struggles. This is the moment to show your support.